I am here with Kristen Coffield. I am so excited to have you on today. Let's get right into it.
Allie, thank you for inviting me, and we have a lot to talk about.
So, we're going to start with the hottest topic, healthy grandparenting. I want you to explain that to somebody that maybe doesn't understand or doesn't know what the principles of healthy grandparenting really are.
So, I have been in women's wellness for about 2 decades, and I started as a chef and moved into being a culinary wellness coach. And the wellness space is crowded, as you know. So, what happened was I became a grandparent 3.5 years ago.
Right.
And I started talking about wellness in the context of grandparenting, and that active grandparenting is actually a form of modern grandparenting,
Right.
where grandparents are focused on their health and wellness as a way to help them grandparent better. So, all the things that make us great grandparents, being able to show up, being able to get up and down off the floor 50 times a day, being healthy so we don't need help ourselves, also help us be active agers. So, active grandparenting is a term that I coined that really describes this movement of modern grandparenting where grandparents are focusing on their health and wellness so they can show up better for
Right.
grandparenting.
And I think that that's so awesome. And it's something that I wish that, people thought about years and years and years ago. And something that we've spoken about, and now I'm going to take it a little bit into my world, which is clinical nutrition, is we've talked about the wonders in what we say the perimenopause and menopause boom, right? There's more clinicians that are educating themselves, and there's more women that are getting access to that evidence-based care from both a medical and a nutrition standpoint. But what we're seeing is that we're looking into menopause, but we're not looking so far past menopause. What happens, right, when women enter into their, I'll say, in my young person tone, healthy grandparenting era, nutrition over 60.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, the whole post pause space, right?
Right.
So you've been through all these hormone changes, you've navigated getting yourself to this post pause space. Maybe now you're becoming a grandparent, or maybe you're just an active ager, but there's not a lot of information out there that's really being curated for this particular segment of the female market. And we also know that a lot of information that we're going on is information that was really based on men, not based on women.
Right.
So here's this group of women who many of them are still working, they're playing pickleball, they're in community involvement, they're involved in charities, they're becoming grandparents. They want to stay relevant. They want to look great. They want to have energy for the things that matter. And one of the things that I think every woman needs to really prioritize is having agency over your own health and wellness. Because quite honestly, the systems aren't out there to support you as you go into this third chapter of life. So,
Right.
as we discussed earlier, there are some really basic pillars that women can focus on that are absolutely free. They can do themselves. And one of my favorite topics is always hydration.
Right. So let's talk about hydration. Something that we know is with aging, that thirst mechanism decreases. It becomes less of a priority. When we were speaking, you even changed my perspective on hydration. So tell me, why is hydration so important?
Yeah, hydration is this low hanging fruit of wellness.
Right.
So every organ, every metabolic function depends on hydration
Right.
in your body. It is literally the Windex of wellness, right?
Right.
So hydration is overlooked and underutilized in trying to accomplish all these other goals: the losing of the weight, the improving the sleep, the building the muscle, the living younger, longer, and better. So people jump right to working out like a fiend, going on restrictive diets,
Right.
and they're sort of missing this foundational piece of wellness because it never was taught to them.
Right.
And hydration, like eating, like exercise, like sleep, like mindfulness, is a practice. And nobody ever said you need a hydration practice. You need to wake up in the morning. Your first beverage of each day should be water because you need to rehydrate after the fast that occurs during sleep. Okay, well, that's great. But what else happens when you're sleeping? All of your major organs undergo a metabolic detox. All that metabolic waste in your lymphatic system. What's your lymphatic system? It's located between your muscle and your skins. It's the trash can of the body. The
Right.
lymphatic system is how you help your body detox. So, hydration starts the detoxification process. If you're an active grandparent and you want to be able to get up and down off the floor 50 times a day, you need synovial fluid in your joints so your joints move well. You
Right.
need pliability in your muscles so your muscles move well. You need your spinal fluid topped off so your brain functions well. It is
I
the basic.
Yeah, and I think what's really important, and you touched on it without saying it, which is really important, is if we're going to focus on exercise, we need to focus on hydration, right? Just in general. And we're not even talking about the losses that we have from sweat, but going into exercise in a place where we're not in a dehydrated state. So you have a little bit of fluid to lose, right? Even when it comes to having a diet, let's say we're going to focus on building muscle and increasing protein. When you increase protein, you need to increase fluid, right? You need to help remove the nitrogen from the protein and excrete that
Yeah.
from the kidneys. So what I'm seeing and what we know to be true is that hydration is one of those building blocks that you said everybody has access to. I find women don't even necessarily know how much fluid they should be taking in. So I really value it for you being, if I can teach you how to hydrate, then I've set you up on a playing field where now you have access to all of those other things. If it's not the exercise, it's the diet. And if it's not the diet and the exercise, it's just putting a wellness practice in that ultimately is going to help them in the long term.
And helps everyone. And if you're an active grandparent, it's a practice you want your grandchildren to see you doing
Right.
because you want them to learn hydration from an early age. This is a powerful tool in our wellness arsenal.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, just like you said, if you're not measuring your water, you're not drinking enough. Right there, off the top, I can confidently say, if you're not measuring your water, you don't know how much you're drinking, you're probably not drinking enough. And people get really funny about hydration because they're like, "Oh, I'll be running to the bathroom all the time."
Right.
Well, it's not uncomplicated. When you think about hydration, most of us are drinking tap water that we filter.
Right.
Now, that tap water already went through the municipal processing plant where they treated it with chemicals to make sure we're not going to die of some waterborne,
Right. Bacteria or
right.
something. Yeah.
And it's been filtered and filtered, and then you filter it again, and the water tastes good, but it doesn't have any of the salts or the minerals or the elements that should be in the water we drink.
Right.
And those are called electrolytes. And people hear about electrolytes and they think, oh, I'm going to buy these little fancy packets that taste like watermelon.
Lemon, raspberry.
Right.
Yes.
And so now we're getting into ultra processed electrolytes, but it's much more simple than that.
Right. Tell me, what's a quick and dirty? How are we getting
Quickest-
our electrolytes in?
Easiest way is mined ancient salts.
Okay.
Redmond salt is an ancient salt from the Great Salt Lakes. You want to make sure, and believe me, there is a pink Himalayan sea salt mafia out there. So you want to make sure you're getting Himalayan sea salt that's actually mined. It's actually ancient. It's not a man-made dyed salt
Right.
to trick you.
Right.
But these ancient salts contain all the elements that should be in the water we're drinking. And I want to tell you a quick story because I think this resonates so well. My daughter's husband put in a super water filtration system in their home, a reverse osmosis system,
Right.
a whole house system.
Yeah.
And they have a 110-pound dog named Thor. And I was visiting and babysitting, and my daughter said, it's the craziest thing. Look at Thor. He's out in the yard eating dirt. And I said, Jessie, your water is so filtered that the tap water the water coming out of your tap that's filtered, that's going into his bowl, doesn't contain any of the fulvic or humic minerals that should be in the water Thor's drinking. So he knows instinctively to go in the yard and eat dirt to get those minerals. Because minerals, most of us don't realize we're walking around mineral deficient. We think we're vitamin deficient, but it's really the minerals.
Right.
So getting the sea salt or buying some simple electrolyte liquid that's just the electrolytes is the easiest, quickest, and most inexpensive way to get the water you're drinking into your cells so it can power up your metabolic processes.
And I think that women habit stacking that and understanding I have to drink water, and then secondarily thinking, how can I enrich my water? Not only does it feel good, right, from like an emotional and psychological standpoint, but it can take them to that next step where they're doing a pattern that really helps them. Now, you brought up minerals, and this is another topic, especially when we are talking about aging, that I want to speak about. So we're going to shift into bones. You said minerals, you said we're not getting enough of them. Nutrition-wise, my brain started to light up, right? So we'll first start with calcium. I'll talk about it from the perspective of a dietitian, and I really want to get it in the perspective of culinary wellness, right? So osteoporosis is not a calcium deficiency. We know that, but we do know in the bone forming years, right? So we're talking about women in my generation. We lay our our bone mass down by 30. After that, we need to do everything we possibly can to protect and build our bones. I want to talk about that. Secondarily, I want to talk about tips and tricks you have for women from food. We're talking about food. How do we get our calcium from food? Let's first start with the mineral of calcium, and then let's talk about bone health and habits.
Okay. Well, let's start with getting those electrolytes in everybody's water because that's, kind of the first step. And getting enough calcium is tricky because to get the calcium to be absorbed and used, you can't just take the calcium alone. And maybe you can elaborate more on that. But what I like to do is try to get everybody to get a diet that's more nutrient dense.
Beautiful.
And one of the things which you and I talked about before was that people don't understand is what's happened in our big global market society is that people go to the grocery store and they buy the same foods over and over and over. So instead of eating, it's fall now, instead of gorging ourselves on winter squash and mushrooms and dark leafy greens, we're eating the same 20 foods all year round.
Right.
We're eating chicken and broccoli and blueberries and tomatoes. And so what's happened is we're limiting our nutrients by limiting the foods we eat. And by not eating seasonal and local, we're becoming nutrient deficient because those foods that have to travel so far to get to us, food loses its nutritional value over time. So those blueberries from Mexico that are in that little clamshell.
Right.
If you've ever gone on vacation and you've left a clamshell of blueberries in your fridge and you come home like 10 days later, they still look good.
Oh, they're good. Yeah.
Yeah. But they don't have the nutrient density that they had when they were put in that clamshell.
I think magnesium is a great example. And I always say, before we go into supplementation, which is a different conversation, and there's always a time and a place for supplementation, let's think about where we're getting foods rich in magnesium. I'll give you the two big: leafy greens and whole grains, right? So if we look at the American diet and we say that only 60% of Americans will meet their magnesium needs, we can look directly at the food source and see that we are not consuming those foods. I really value your perspective on eating a varied diet and really eating seasonal and local. You're totally correct that we develop habits. Now, we develop habits early in life. Do we change them later in life? And how do we change them later in life?
That's a good question. And I love magnesium because every cell in our body needs it to function.
Yeah.
So magnesium's that important and nobody's getting enough. You'd have to eat so much kale.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. People don't really know how to prepare the dark leafy greens, so they kind of steer away from them. But I will say on my website at the Culinary Cure, I have a lot of recipes for vegetables, and I love dark leafy greens. I bought a little silicone microwave cooker thing,
Mm-hmm.
and you put your dark leafy greens in there, put them in the microwave for like 3 minutes, and they immediately cook down, and you can then throw them in a pan with garlic and some olive oil, and it makes what was a hard big task a very simple, easy to clean up task. So getting enough magnesium is tricky, and I think you and I would both agree that supplementing with magnesium can be really beneficial.
Yeah. I think that as long as the dose is safe, which sometimes we see in this wellness space, we always think that more is more, and the more we take, the better we're doing. But I think in the correct dose, it can be something that can definitely supplement the diet. A nutritional point I want to bring up, because I think it's really essential, is our vitamin D status, right, is going to impact absorption of all major bone minerals. So vitamin D is going to impact absorption of calcium. That's a very intimate and close, well-studied relationship. The less known relationships are going to be phosphorus and magnesium. And I find that to be so important because we have to give these tools to people. I really appreciated you saying that this is a way to make cooking easier. If you do this, then this, here you go. I think that putting those tools into the hands of women, men, makes it a little bit less daunting and more actionable.
Yeah, and as a culinary wellness coach, I'm always encouraging people to try new things. And we don't just want to try new things nutritionally. We want to always be lifelong learners, right?
Right.
And making those neural connections in the brain, by getting out of those patterns that we get so locked into. And, that's patterns about how we start our day. And so many people have a cup of coffee first thing in the morning instead of having that glass of water first. Or so many people eat the same foods over and over again because it's become a pattern. And when we can change a pattern and people feel the benefit, then they become incentivized to keep doing that thing because
Right.
we all want to feel really good.
Right.
So making it easy for people to cook dark leafy greens, making them delicious, so you want to keep eating them, that's good motivation.
Yeah.
And on a bigger note, we've lost so much of the culinary information that for generations was handed down. So the things that people ate for millennia, and the way people prepared them, people talk about gluten intolerance. Well, there's a whole lot of reasons for that. And there are indigestible plant proteins, of course. And they're like when you have sourdough bread, the processes to break down those indigestible plant proteins and make them digestible are part of traditional cooking. And people have lost that knowledge
Yeah.
about how to do traditional cooking. And they've been educated by companies who are trying to sell you their foods, their ultra processed foods, or their prepared foods, or this will save you time. And really, what we want people to think about when it comes to nutrition is number one, what you're paying for when you buy food is nutrients, not
Right.
calories. You're buying nutrients.
Right.
So you want to get the most nutrients for your consumer dollars.
Right.
And number two, you want the least processed foods.
Right.
And when you think about what processing is, it's removing things from the food.
Yeah.
And very often, what is being removed are healthy fats, are all important fiber that we need for our gut health, and the gut calls the shots. So you want your gut to be healthy because the gut sends more messages from the gut to the brain every day than the brain sends to the gut.
Yeah.
So the gut's really calling
Yeah.
the shots.
And we see that so much with the prevalence of IBS in our go, 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 fast paced world. Something that I really got, which is a take home message, not just for me, but I think that a lot of people are my generation, is we shouldn't lose that cooking skill. Right. And you're right. And I'm in a generation of fast paced. What can I buy? Maybe I'll turn my microwave on, but we're missing a skill that not only we need 30, 40, 50, but we're going to need it at 60, 70, and 80. And it is having that foundation so that we can prepare meals that not only meet our big macronutrient calorie needs, but exactly what you said, meet those mineral needs.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah, well, cooking is a survival skill.
right.
And this is where we've really dropped the ball, because if you go to the farmer's market and you're like, ooh, look at this thing, look at that thing, we're in a unique time. You can literally find a recipe for it in seconds.
Right.
And I think the problem is so many recipes are complicated, and people think you need to have all the ingredients and you need to follow the recipe. Cooking is everything, right? It's love. It's how you nourish your body. It's how you show people you love them. It's what brings families together for conversation. It's your community. It's your history. It's your heritage. It's your holidays. So
Right.
food can bring people together. Food has the power to help you be healthy or hurt your health.
Yeah.
And when people stop thinking of food and recipes as a chore and start thinking of it as an opportunity and a joy, it changes everything.
Yeah.
Because you know how you feel. When you eat a great, healthy meal, you feel
You
so
feel
good.
Yeah.
And I think for women over 50, let's just say 50, if you spent years cooking for your family, and then that changes, and then maybe you're cooking for two people or one person. If you haven't already kind of locked in those culinary survival skills, it's really easy to slide into nutrient deficiency. And as we get older, it's more important than ever to make sure that as women, we're getting enough fiber, fat, and especially protein.
Yeah. Let's talk about protein. Protein is a celebrity these days, which I think is important. I think that the other nutrients deserve some respect, but protein, we know it's important because we know that protein, the building blocks of protein are amino acids, and amino acids are needed for muscle building. Not just muscle building, they're needed for everything in the body that contains nitrogen, hormones, and so on, but we need it for muscle. So I want you to give us those practical skills to get protein in for active grandparents.
Yeah. And active grandparenting requires strength. I have a grandson who's a year and a half. He's the size of a 3.5-year-old. So people think he's just like a slow talker. But he weighs 35 pounds. And when you pick him up, he makes no effort to hold on to you. So it's like picking up a bag of mulch.
Right.
So grandparenting does require strength. Think of it this way. If you're going to get in a swimming pool with a grandchild, you need to have the strength to lift them up and out of the pool.
Right.
So it's also a safety thing. So when we think of active grandparenting, becoming a grandparent is the motivation for getting in better shape.
Right.
And I don't care what motivates you, just get in better shape. Because the
Right.
better shape you're in, the better you're going to age. You're going to avoid falls and all of that stuff. But as women, we got a lot of bad information. So we were told, hey, you need to cut back on calories.
Right.
You need to, get your weight down. You need to look a certain way. And in doing that, we cut back on fiber, fat, and protein.
Right.
And so we gave ourselves this huge disadvantage during years when we really should have been packing on the muscle, keeping that bone mass strong so that, our body can last an active lifetime.
Right.
So I love hacks. I'm a big hack girl. I'm like, if I can make this easy for people, I can solve these problems for them quickly. So one of my biggest hacks is bone broth is also having a moment. But if you get a mug of bone broth and then you put a scoop of, there's a brand I like that's it's a 1-ingredient bone broth protein powder. So you've got a mug of broth that's got 10 calories of protein. You're adding a scoop of this 1-ingredient protein powder. Now you're at 25 grams of protein in about 14 ounces of water. You are hydrating.
Beautiful.
You are getting 25 grams of bioavailable protein. You can do this between breakfast and lunch and dinner. That's going to give you an additional 50 grams of protein a day, which is going to really, and it's going to give you about 30 ounces of water, right?
Beautiful. Yeah.
So that's a win-win, and it's a really easy way to make sure that you're getting that enough protein.
Yeah. I love to make it easy.
Yeah, make it easy.
Yeah.
Like, just do it. And then you're doing a couple. Women love to multitask. So now we're hydrating. We're getting extra collagen. We're getting our protein, and we're not having to eat a lot of calories, which can potentially create inflammation when we have to eat large amounts of protein at one time.
Right. I really appreciate that you brought up the messaging that was sent to women for years on years and years on years. And what I find is it's still a difficult message. As a person that works with women to help them cognitively change how they view food, even with today's wonderful job of marketing and social media to women and education from doctors of you need to focus on muscle mass. You can't be afraid of eating healthy fats. You can't be against calories. I mean, we have to monitor them, but we can't be afraid of them. I think that it's still years of knowledge that has to be changed. And I think that open conversations of we at least need to acknowledge that people are struggling with this, right? Because it was hush hush for a long time. Nobody spoke about how they felt about their body. And I think that opening the conversation allows a woman to say, okay, I'm being seen, I'm being heard. It's okay that I have these thoughts around food and body image, but now it's time that we can slowly start to work on them and change them. So I thank you for that conversation because I think that it's very much missed in today's world.
I do a wellness reset a couple of times a year. And so I have my active grandparenting 21-day wellness reset. And recently, when I ran the program, it is amazing to me that I still get this question asked. People are like, can I eat the egg yolk? I'm like, oh, please eat the egg yolk.
Right.
Eat the egg yolk. There are so many important nutrients. And the egg might be one of the world's most perfect
egg yolk
foods.
became like public enemy number one.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think the misconceptions about the difference between calories. All calories are not created equal.
Beautiful.
So the calories in an apple and the calories in a bagel might be the same, but the nutrients in the apple and the nutrients in the bagel are very different.
Right.
So counting calories doesn't get you where you want to go. Very often, my husband and I go out to dinner, and when the wait person is bringing out the plates of food, they want to put his order in front of me because I ordered the steak. And,
right.
I'm having the baked potato. I am not afraid of calories. I'm afraid of not getting enough nutrients.
Yeah, that is such an amazing perspective. One more question is how can we support healthy grandparents? So I think about that. I am so lucky that I've had parents that modeled healthy behaviors. They eat healthy. They exercise. I'm not worried about them not being active grandparents, but I understand that that is more along the lines of luxury than anything else. So how do we support our parents when we're in those childbearing years and we're busy and we're working and so on? But how do we show up for them so that they can show up for us?
Yeah. I love this question, Allie, because it's a big part of what's in my active grandparenting book and my programs. It starts with communication and conversation. You're lucky. Your parents already prioritize their health and wellness. Not all parents do. I have someone who works for me, and she said, oh my gosh, Kristen, my parents are no help at all. They don't take good care of their health. They don't make a big effort to be involved in the lives of our 3 daughters. And even if they did, they're not fit enough that I could leave them with them.
Right.
So I think the big starting point is this is a new job for everyone. Parents are becoming parents for the first time. Grandparents are becoming grandparents for the first time. Grandparents are now going to be partners with parents in this new role as a grandparent. And if they want to be able to do that well, being able to have clear and honest conversations about health and wellness and physical capability for those grandparenting years is an important conversation to have right from the get-go.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to learn from you, Kristen. Thank you. And we got your number.